Okay, Internet, hello. It has been a little while since we've seen each other. I don't know, a few months probably. And yeah, a lot of things have changed, but the most important thing that has happened in that time frame is that I have a new awesome shirt with an astronaut riding a unicorn through a rainbow in space. And I found it through an awesome website that gives graphic t-shirts to adults that want to dress like kids, like myself. So today's blog and kind of video, I'm making these videos that are kind of like too long, didn't read, I don't want to read the article, so just explain it to me, and I'll do that right now. And the idea and the backstory to this is during the time that I journal, which is usually every day, while I was journaling, I was reflecting on some of the topics that I struggle to learn. And most of those topics tend to be extremely technical by nature, and really the only way that you can genuinely understand it is by practicing and tinkering within that technical area of understanding. And recently, with kind of my shift towards getting more technical in my job and also trying to be more technical just more generally because it's something I'm interested in, I've always had an interest in and curiosity in. And the thing is, I've been doing a lot of cybersecurity related CTFs, which are capture the flags. So it's basically like a game of hacking and reverse engineering and to do a few other things to capture a flag or to defend something. And in that, there's a lot of practice. There's very little theory that's needed. It's a lot of tinkering and trial and error and failure. And I realized that while journaling and trying to reflect on these topics and why I've struggled so much with them is that these topics tend to be centered around learning through practice instead of theory and abstract ideas. And this is kind of the revelation I came to. And I wanted to basically share this idea, my thought process around it, and also my method of going forward to hopefully figure out a way to incorporate more practical learning into my regiment of learning instead of just focusing on theory. And yeah, so that's the idea. And here we have is the post that I've written. I'm going to walk you through it. I'm not going to read the entire thing to you, but I'll basically pull out pieces that I think are most interesting, and I'll explain and provide more context to those that might not be in the article itself. So this might be a little exclusive thing for you and no one else. So let's start with the beginning. I've given you the backstory of how I come to this. Through journaling, realized that I'm learning certain topics I struggled with, and I wanted to figure out why. And when thinking about this process, I realized that there was really two areas of learning. So the two areas of learning are simple. It's practice and theory. These are the two kind of realms of things that I've learned that I kind of consume knowledge through. And you can see that's listed here. And I obviously need to get better at drawing on this, but this is what we're going to try. So here we have two theories, right? So we have practice and we have theory. And with theory, for instance, for this one here, this is probably 100% of the way that I've learned previously in the past. And that comes in the form of a variety of areas. So that comes in the form of books, blogs, articles, etc. And that's how I've consumed a lot of the information I've consumed. I've applied it to work, I've applied it to life, and it's been very useful. But that type of learning through theory is really served to you on a silver platter, where someone has already done the thought process prior and they're presenting the idea that's already polished and given to you, and you can apply that to your life, which is a great way to learn a lot of things through other people. But when it comes to actually applying these topics and this understanding to practical problems, it tends to fall short. And that's what I've noticed with the technical topics especially, and that's something that I've dealt with previously. And that's one piece I wanted to point out here. So there's two areas, right? Theory and practice. And most of my life has been in theory. Now I'm trying to shift more to practice. And the reason I've wanted to do this is really the main thing is I want to be able to think more critically, and I've realized that a lot of the brains that I admire are the ones that actually have the ability to think through things in a critical way, and they can actually break a problem down to its core fundamental pieces, and they can build back up from those pieces into a solution that is either satisfactory to them or solves the problem they're trying to solve. And that could be just understanding the topic better. The hard truth about all of this is that I struggle to actually go through those critical thinking processes. And the way that I've defined it and kind of structured it in my head, and I'm going to label it here, is basically mental cycles. So if we come over here, you can see that I have a little bit of a side note inside of this article stating the definition of how I define mental cycles. And I'm not going to define it and read it to you here, but in a nutshell, what it means is that you're able to actually go through the cycle of an iteration in your brain of thinking through a problem, struggling through it, because a lot of these mental cycles take effort, energy, and a lot of failure to actually come to a conclusion from first principles, from your own perspective, and not basically taking somebody else's idea, taking the surface level concept of it, and then regurgitating it out to others. That's not something I'm interested in, and that's not something I want to do more of in the future. I want to actually start thinking on my own and really fundamentally thinking things through, and building that muscle. And that's, I think, the most important thing. And we're going to write that down here because I think that's very important, is the term muscle itself. So muscle, right? I write like a 4-year-old. You'll have to get used to it, or I'll have to get better at writing, whichever one happens first. So muscle. And I say this because it's not a thing that is switched on or off. You're not a critical thinker, not a critical thinker. It's something that's built over time. And that's actually a point that I've made in this post, is that the people that I admire, the brains I admire, they tend to go through iterations of these cycles. They've done it, and they've built these muscles over decades and thousands of iterations through hard problems. And in the beginning, when initially going through these cycles, I realized that I struggle to do it, and I have a non-existent ability to do so. And it's painful, honestly, when thinking through a problem without any kind of guidance or assistance or silver platter of ideas to kind of pick through. And forcing yourself to do that is forcing yourself to strengthen that muscle. It's basically doing curls to get bigger biceps. You're basically running through these mental cycles to build out your muscles to actually have the ability to think through that problem. So with that being said, I'm going to bring you down a bit further, and I wanted to kind of give you an idea of now that I have a problem that I've faced, and the problem is that I want to lean more towards learning through practice, just so I could actually get the byproduct of building out this mental muscle to run through more mental cycles. And that's really the end goal. And I needed some sort of structure or some sort of object or topic to pursue that would basically feed this end goal that I'm trying to receive, which is more of a meta goal. And the things that I've decided to pursue, there's a few reasons why I've decided on these topics, and I'll kind of list them out here for you. So the topics that I decided to pursue are listed here in the article down here. So you can see that right here, these are some of the topics I want to pursue. And there's a few reasons why, right? So the first is interest. That's probably the most important, so we'll put a little star there next to it. And the reason that's important is because I need to make sure that whatever I'm pursuing, I have enough interest and curiosity in the topic that when it does become painful and I do start to actually kind of struggle, because I know I will, it needs to have plenty of interest in that so I can actually sustain the entire process for a longer period of time. The next thing below that's actually going to be something that's more practical, which is future proofing. And I'll explain what that means and the kind of the faulty concepts around this, because it's probably is faulty, but it's still something I think it's going to work. And then the last thing that I've not mentioned in the article, which is exclusive for you, is the nature of the tasks that I'm pursuing and how it leans more towards practice and less theory. Because let's just do nature. Let's for our term nature of T, sure, nature of task. And the nature of the task, it leans more towards practice, because a lot of the topics I've decided here are built around practice. The way to learn these in a good way is actually to practice them. Similar to like playing piano. You can read as much as you want with piano, but you're not going to be able to play piano unless you actually practice. And that's a similar concept here. So let's break each of these down a little bit further. So I've talked through interest. I've kind of showed you this is why I'm doing it, and this is why I've decided to have interest as a priority. The next one is future proofing. So what does that mean? Future proofing, in the sense, as I've written it in this article as well, is that we all know that society is moving a certain direction, and there are certain jobs that are higher demand than other jobs. And this is something that I think about often, and I don't necessarily think about specific jobs in themselves, but I think about the skill sets that lie beneath those jobs, and then the skill sets that lie beneath those skill sets. And those meta skill sets are the thing that I'm actually seeking here, which is being able to think critically and also run through the mental cycles. But above that, the more superficial thing is these kind of topics here. As you can see, all of these tend to be something that are sought by a lot of companies. These are in high demand. So if you have these skill sets or a mix of these skill sets, then you're more appetizing to companies, and they'll pursue you without you having to pursue them. So this is very an economic, superficial thing, but it's practical. It's important. Money is not everything, but money is nice, especially when you don't have to worry about paying the bills. So this is something that I wanted to pursue, and this is why I chose those topics for that specific purpose of future-proofing my career and having these skill sets laid out and a mix of them. With that being said, and all that being said, there is a point that I've made in here that actually states that even though I'm stating this here, that if in the future our robot overlords, take us over, got that mentioned here, right here, all these technical skills would basically be useless, and philosophy and literature will be the path forward, and that is when I will pivot to focusing on those. Even though I actually focus on both today, I'll focus more on those in the future. Anywho, that's the idea around future-proofing and interest, and the last one is the nature. Kind of explain that. A lot of these are built around practice, so it's kind of focusing on those. So those are the topics I decided and the reasons I decided them, and that was kind of the thought process behind this. So the very last thing here is planning for the pain in the future. So I realized that going down in the future, this is going to be a painful process in the beginning, but over time, this painful process will become less painful, hopefully, and it'll be something I start to accept, and then eventually something I start to embrace. Because as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the brains that I admire, they tend to be people that actually enjoy the process of seeking out problems that they can run their mental cycles over. They can basically iterate over this problem with that mental cycle because it's something that they enjoy. They get endorphins probably from it, and it's something that they've kind of incorporated into their lives, and it's part of them as a human. That's how they identify themselves. And that's something that I eventually want to get to. That's a very long-term goal, but it's something that I have in mind, and I know that I will get there. It's just a matter of time. So I kind of want to walk you through some of the initial pain points that I know I will hit, and I've already hit a few today. And some of those, if I scroll down here, you'll see some of those I've listed out here. And it's very interesting to actually experience these firsthand. And let's go to the first one. So I have 3 here. There's a lot that I'll run into, I'm sure, but these are the 3 that I've either thought through and I know I'll hit eventually, or I've already hit. So here we have frustration, embarrassment, and ignorance. So frustration, what does that mean? So with frustration, and actually what I should have done with a lot of these is just like scratch this out to distract you so you can't read it. But too late now. Anyway, so frustration, what does that mean? So when being a person that has learned the majority of the ideas and topics and understanding of things that they have, in their head through theory, they tend to actually, like I said, get a lot of that stuff through a silver platter from someone that's already learned it. So when you actually try to learn through practice, you become frustrated quickly because you realize that with learning through practice, there's a lot of failure, there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of iterations through trying to understand something, and it doesn't come immediately first try. And that's something that I've realized. And when working through certain CTFs or programming exercises or projects and things like that, I've realized that there's a lot of downtime of me sitting here trying to think, what in the hell what am I supposed to do? I don't understand. And then really just trying things and experimenting. And that is really the central part of this, is experimenting and then iterations. And as you kind of iterate through that, you have these small feedback loops, which is something I'll talk about in ignorance. But that's frustration, realizing that it's going to happen, embracing it, accepting it, and then hopefully then pursuing it. So the next thing is embarrassment, right? So with embarrassment, this is an interesting thing, and it's very humbling, which I've mentioned here. And like I said, with theory, things are given to you on a silver platter, but through practice, it's not so much. And here you realize how much you actually don't know. Because even though that I'm pursuing a lot of stuff through practice, I'm still going to dip into theory because I at least need to know the ideas, the abstract frameworks, and things like that before actually trying to solve a problem with the topic. And here, I realized that it's very humbling to actually think that you understand a topic, so approaching a problem with this idea of your understanding, and then once you approach the problem, you quickly realize that you don't really understand everything. You've either forgot something or you've not scratched deep enough into a topic to actually apply it to a problem. And that's when you realize that it's a humbling experience, when you basically realize that, oh crap, I don't understand this all the way, and I need to go back and reflect on something and learn something more, and then I come back to the problem and try to fix it, which is embarrassing in the beginning, at least to me internally. But then I realized quickly that this humbling practice is something that not only improves your ability to embrace the humbling nature of experimentation, but also it brings you back down to earth and makes you realize that you don't know as much as you think you know, and also you never will know everything. And the final one here is going to be ignorance. And this is the one I wanted to talk about, tight feedback loops. And ignorance is something that really feeds back into the embarrassment piece. And ignorance is basically, like I said, you think you know a topic, but you really don't. You try it out, you realize you don't, and there's that feedback loop, right, through practice, where you try something, you get a feedback right away that says either you're wrong, it's broken, or you're going the wrong direction. And that is a moment of realizing how ignorant you are of the topic, which is kind of feeds back to embarrassment, but this is kind of separated out with the feedback loop and the importance of using that. And with that said, that's really the post. It's not really long. This video is probably longer than it should be, but this is my first time doing it, and this is the first time using this pen. So, with that being said, Internet, I will see you sometime later.